Hello everyone, welcome to a new video. This time we'll be taking a look at Itsuki and IS's failure at adding a unit properly, as in Travant. I'll start with Travant for obvious reasons, since that one will take like 2 seconds to go through. So, Travant. Well, actually probably more than 2 seconds, because I do have a whole lot to just say in terms of how much he has been shafted. Travant comes in with a Silver Lance Plus, which is a reference to the fact that he gives his Gungnir away to his son Aryan. Now, there's two things I don't understand with Travant, is why are you going with Gen 2 Travant and not Gen 1 Travant? If you're going to go by reference, you're actively going out of your way to shaft him. I don't understand why also the banner that introduced Quan and Eflin, instead of adding Travant there, because that would have actually made a lot of sense, they decided to add, I think, Gemkey, which I really adore Gemkey, don't get me wrong, but Travant was thematically way more appropriate. Gemkey just did not make a lick of sense. Yet here we are. I don't get it. I really don't get it. So they decided to go in Gen 2 and then go out of their way to just... Let me just put it this way. They went out of their way to take the lesser variation of the two Travants, and then went out of their way to just apply a reference to make sure that he does not get a pref, because if he had a pref, then Altena would not be as good in the eye of the player, I guess, quote-unquote. And then you kind of realize the fact that Altena was meant to be quick, and they could have just made Altena quick, which would have made her better as a unit. To put it in perspective, yeah, Quan does not have Pursuit. In other words, he cannot double in FE4. His speed growth is a lot lower than Altena, yet in Heroes he has 29 speed while Altena has 26. 25 actually, 26 is Travant. What? Hey, the character that literally cannot double even if he had a million speed actually doubles better than his daughter that is actually getting Pursuit and Promotion and has plenty of speed. Whatever. So, yeah. The worst part is they literally had a forging bond where they went out of their way to refer at the Gabolg and the Gungnir, not as the Gabolg and the Gungnir, but the earthly Gabolg and the heavenly Gungnir. You'd think if they were smart, they would just have given Gungnir to Travant and the heavenly Gungnir to Aryan whenever he was going to be added, most likely also as a GHB. But no? Why? It's actually pretty depressing to see. Travant is probably my second most favorite villain in the series, because he's not exactly a villain for the sake of being a villain. As a matter of fact, the designer notes for Travant quite literally states that if he was born on the right side, aka on Sigurd's side, he would probably have been one of the most instrumental character ever from their side to help them. Because the reason why Travant is a villain is because he's basically the king of Thracia, my bad. And essentially, the reason he does a lot of very disgusting acts, to put it in the easiest way I have to put it, is purely for his people. Every action he takes is for his people. He does not care for his name, he does not care for his reputation. At the end of the day, he's going to drag his entire reputation through the mud if it means that his people will be happy and prosper. And I love that. It makes him a lot more human as far as a character goes, and almost makes you cheer for him. The only character that comes close as far as villains goes in the entire series to me is Arvis. No one else. And to see this kind of treatment to him is depressing. Now, as far as a unit is concerned, he has a lot of def and a lot of attack. The only positive I have to say about that, especially on a flyer, is the fact that he, with, you know, just quick riposte and slaying lens, is a good Altina counter for AA. What, did you think I would actually say anything positive about this? Hell nah. Hell nah. The fact he doesn't have IV, so he can't even get Speed Plus, is just laughable at this point. For all of the wrong reasons, really. Now, flyer guidance is a thing. I don't expect a whole lot of people foddering him for it, because outside of flyer exclusive teams, it's not really good. And for most characters that really want to have an effect like this, they just run flyer formation. The thing with flyers is that they don't really have a whole lot of really important B slots. Like, outside of, say, Tsubasa, that really wants Brash Assault to combo into her weapon, since it's basically Desperation that works at any percentage, which makes it very easy to work with, especially with double effectiveness, which basically breaks Wary Fighter if the enemy can hit back, which means that she actually slaughters Surtur even if she doesn't one-shot him. Yeah, like, in her case, yeah, the B slot is kind of important. But most other flyers, you'll struggle to find a B skill that's actually important. They don't get lulls, they don't get raft, they don't get special spiral, they don't get a whole lot of skills that are extremely helpful. At best, they get desperation, and that's not exactly an amazing skill. Now, is it? For flyers. Because a lot of flyers, the main flyers that are used, typically have something like Sturdy Impact, or Bond skills, or just really good bulk all around because of said skills. If they don't have something like that, they just have insane killing power, like Aston Katria, or Elincia for that matter. Or Cordelia as well now. So, having a B skill like Desperation, it becomes kind of redundant. So you'd rather just have extra mobility to be able to kill more units without being in a compromised situation as easily. Which is, you know, pretty good. So the fact that you kind of don't have to need a B skill, at least for most flyers, kind of just makes flyer guidance I'd rather have gold or ward flyer than waste that for flyer guidance 9 times out of 10. Guidance is a different beast because it allows you to move your armored units a lot easier and without having, you know, March to rely on, which makes so that you have a albeit restrictive way to move around for your armored units. So yeah, makes sense. But flyer guidance is honestly not that good, so might as well say he doesn't really have any fodder. Great. As for the first merge, who am I kidding? Everybody knows he gets attack and def. There's no surprise there, and of course he prioritized defense over attack. Great. So yeah, he's basically a min-max monster, and outside of being basically Lucas, he's basically got nothing. As far as comparisons are concerned, considering Altena is most likely going to demote, but then again, I'm not even crossing my fingers on that one. You know why? Because at the end of the day, at the end of the damn day, they do whatever they please. We've all seen what happened with Avil not demoting, though I have a few things to say about that later. And no, it's not about me being bitter about it this time. Still, the point is, Altena is most likely going to demote. Unless they really want to have Brash Assault in their 5-star exclusive skill set, which is just... why? The amount of units that use Brash Assault effectively are like 1 or 2. But the second one has it in her weapon, so who cares? It is extremely, extremely niche. So, yeah. But to put it simply, Altena ends up having more defense, more speed, more attack, about the same health. Not really, actually, because Travant will be refining to stats, aka 5 more health. And honestly, even if you just refine the weapon to defense, or res, it doesn't matter. Altena ends up having more defense and res. Why? Earthly Gay Bulk does minus 5 attack. And you basically have 7 more attack also because of Earthly Gay Bulk. And the enemy not being able to buff those stats is also kind of helpful. Now with that said, that weapon is not absolutely broken. Far from it, in fact. But it's still worth mentioning. And it does not work against flyers, of course, which are right now the second strongest movement type of the game. By a mile. You have some strong individual for armored units, like Winter Sophist. But it is a fact that for the most part, nah. It's all infantry, then flyers. Then those individual makes armor the highest, and then cavalry are still dead last. Cavalry needs so much help at this point, it's ridiculous. And no, low attack res won't make all cavalries broken. It makes one of them good. It does not make all of them broken. Moving on. As for the last unit, I do want to point out this. This is a Gen 1 unit. However, if you're just counting ratings, you'll quickly soon find out that, man, not that far behind, especially when you consider the 3 attack speed, def, and res that the Golden Naginata offers. At plus 10, that means you don't need to buff your speed. At plus 10, that means you can use Brazens pretty effectively for purely your res. That basically means you can have 43 def and 43 res. So, unlike Travant, which, I mean, I guess you could use Brazen Attack def twice and still have no speed to double, which is not really what I would suggest. But unlike him, you can just have really good bulk overall. In fact, you can have 52 def and res effectively with double Brazen Attack res. And your speed is still at 48, and your attack is still at 68. You see where I'm coming from here? Tsubaki is actually insane. Even from a Gen 1 versus Gen 4 perspective, he's actually, because of his weapon having 16 might and offering 12 points of stats, actually not behind at all. That's what happens when you have a good weapon. Or a good refine. Looking at you, Leaf, would have been fucking great. Anyway, all that to say that if you want to really build Travant, Tsubaki basically does more or less the same thing, but better. The main thing that makes Tsubaki so much better is the fact that he has a speed stat. The problem with Travant is if he has to deal with, like, if you want to make him quick, right? Because, you know, if you don't have the speed, you're not really that great. Well, you'll typically want to combo is like a buff with Brazen Attack speed. Or something similar so you have some mixed bulk to really abuse your stats. Well, not only does Altena do better at that, but also your speed is too slow. Your starting speed is too slow, I should say. To put it simply, if you have to deal with anything that does res, you die. 9 times out of 10, you'll just die. Unless you go for a Berkut Land set, which is very gimmicky, which at that point just use Lucas, because Lucas can use Special Spiral, Wrath, and such other skills to really make this work. Something Travant does not have access to. Or just use Shiro, if you have that. Or Donald. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter. All of those are just doing better than Travant at this point. So yeah, Tsubaki is just able to set up those Brazens really easily because his speed is already very good. Meaning, even if he has to deal with something that hits his res, which is still better than Travant by 6 points because of Golden Naginata, even if he has something that hits his res, he's typically not going to get doubled. And that means he can set up Brazens. And the second that he's in Brazens, that's 68 attack. Quite a jump, isn't it? So yeah. To put it simply, Travant is kind of just underwhelming right now. If he had a pref, he could actually distinguish himself from the rest, potentially. Man, sure wish he had the pref that he actually owns. But no, it's Gen 2 Travant, so we gotta use those reference. Only when it can screw up characters will we use reference. You know, like Bowie not being able to have close counter against dragons because he's afraid of the wagons. Yeah, that. Especially with such a great weapon as a Raven Tome. I'm not even a fan of Echoes. But that's still bullshit. Anyway. Now we'll be talking about the actual good unit of the batch, which is Itsuki. Now, I do want to point out a few things that feels very shady about Itsuki. 2 banners ago was Evil. A lot of people were pissed because she did not demote. Because she had a role that was a fantastic unit that was able to just be a fantastic generalist with a Res Refine and Res Plus. And then, suddenly, 2 months later, we get a red Tempestral unit that does just that, a generalist. That's bizarre. It has 5 skill in its kit. What? Literal banner units with 4 skills, but Tempestral unit with 5. Something doesn't add up. Then you also realize the fact that this is basically a Chrome alt with Falchion that does not have Aether. No, it stops at Soul for some reason. Almost as if he was meant to come with Aether, but then does not have it. A bit bizarre, isn't it? And the 2 skills he has are skills we already have in the pool. Which is strange, because even with Travant, they typically always have 1 skill that is not easily accessible under Tempestral GHB tiers. Astram had Wrath, for example. Travant had Flyer Guidance, for example. And so on and so forth. Yet for some reason, he doesn't. That's very bizarre. Then you couple that with the fact that Eleonora had a different skill than what was written on the banner review. Not banner review, on the banner reveal. That's shady. Almost as if Eleonora was meant to be the Tempestral first, and that's why the weapon was only blocking follow-up if she had more speed than the enemy. But then, since they saw the reaction with Evil, they decided to do the switcheroo and make Itsuki the Tempestral unit and Eleonora a banner unit. At least that's what it feels to me. Because almost immediately after the banner reveal was done, they already had a message saying, oh yeah, we screwed up the description, and in reality, this is the description. And then you also had on top of this the fact that this is the main character of TMS. Why isn't the main character a banner unit? Typically, if it's like the main character of a new game, they try their best to give him a pref, or her a pref. At least a decent one. Like with Claude in Cunning Bow, Dimitri with Noble Lance, and Edelgar with Victorious Axe, which is honestly one of the best acts of the game. Or how about Byleth with Sword of the Creator? So, yeah. Feels very bizarre that this is just given for free. Imagine if we got like female Byleth as a free Tempestral unit for some reason. Because this is what it feels. This is so out of place. Not to mention, the weapon feels off. Seriously, what the weapon does is basically you get up to 7 attack and def when attacking and getting initiated on, depending on how many characters on the enemy side and on your side have acted before you do so, blah, yada yada yada. And his stat line is super balanced, almost as if the weapon was meant to actually give stat across the board, maybe for like a base of 2 across the board, and then add an extra 2 across the board per character that has acted when you're initiating, or 6 minus 2 per character that has acted on the enemy side, which would have made his stat line really busted and his pref actually worth using. The way it is right now is just brazen attack def with extra steps that are not within your, within your, what's the word? Within your control. So I don't know. Like, all of this to me just screams, oh, yeah, we screwed up on Avel, maybe we should just do something similar to Avel, but at the same time, let's make it a Tempestral unit, so it's at least gated by something. That's just what it feels like to me. It just nothing really adds up here. It's so odd to me. The Mirage Falchion is just really good in general if you just want to have a Dragon Killer for AA. But like, outside of this, it's so bad. It feels like it was meant to just be buffing stat across the board. Not just 2. I don't know. It just feels really odd to me. Really, really odd to me. Especially when you look at Tsubasa next to this. Tsubasa gets 6 attack and speed if 1 person moved. Why the hell does Itsuki get 3 attack and def, 5 if 1 person moved? It's still less stats. You need 2 people to have moved to get the full 7, which is barely better than Tsubasa in terms of stats. But the thing is, Tsubasa also gets Desperation, so... Ugh. Oh, but it also works on enemy phase. So does Brazen's. What's your point? This weapon is just very bizarre. It feels incomplete. Am I the only one that feels this? Maybe I'm just overthinking this. Maybe this is all just a tinfoil hat conspiracy, but... My god. It just doesn't add up. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Anyway, back to the review. Let's talk about Itsuki and his first merge. His first merge is, fortunately, attack and speed. Weirdly enough, he has more speed than Def and Res as far as level 1 stat goes, so he actually gets an extra points of speed, meaning 35 speed at plus 10, not 34. That first merge is absolutely worth getting. You basically get 2 HP, 2 attack, and 1 speed. for free. There's no drawback to this. And this unit is really good in general. As in, it's a better Ross level of good. Most of the set I've already showcased with Ross can work on him very well. It's just that you won't get to have 42 base attack. That's it. Everything else, good to go. This unit is kind of insane. As far as comparison goes, I decided to showcase them with weapons, purely for the simple reason that, you know, you are refining weapons differently for these characters. Like Abel, you'll refine it to res with res plus to make her able to deploy. And as you can see, she actually has better bulk than Itsuki. Not by much, but she does. That said, she's also behind, you know, 5 attack. Attack is kind of a key stats in general, so for 1 def and 1 res, 5 attack is kind of eh. Abel is a bit better in terms of speed, and in this case it does matter, because Itsuki will typically have to use skills to make up for the speed deficit, unless you go for a speed refine, which also works. As for Astrum, well, that was the final nail in the coffin. There's just no reason in ever investing in him anymore, unless you like the character. No matter how you look at it, Itsuki just kind of has more attack. And as far as combined def and res, Itsuki absolutely crushes Astrum. Even if he goes for a speed refine, at best, Astrum ends up with 3 more defense at the cost of 7 res. But see, here's the thing. You can ploy with Itsuki. You can't ploy with Astrum. Meaning, even say, you know, I don't go for the def refine. Say I go for speed. And, you know, that's understandable. At the end of the day, I could use just attack ploy on Itsuki, and oh, would you look at that? I basically have 42 def, 41 res. Yeah. Itsuki is kind of a beast. There's just nothing Astrum can really do to function better than Itsuki. I will say though, Astrum is better on lower merges than Itsuki, so there's that. But on higher merges, Itsuki's ceiling is the goddamn limit. There is a lot you can do with him. That said, even if that is the case, just like Astrum, he is held back by not really having a good pref. Mercurius is an absolute god-awful pref. Seriously, if that effect was just not reliant on the enemy using physical skills, perfect. But the fact that it's reliant on all of your allies, that it buffs to be physical users, and it gives nothing but visible stats, which just by default makes it a worse Brave Lucina, just in terms of stat buff alone, it's just... why? Brave Lucina at least gives breath on top of it, and the buffs itself are better. What is there that Astrum has that's good? It kind of shocks me, really. Anyway, let's talk about builds. This time I have 8, I think. Though 2 of them at the end are a bit strange. Well, we'll see when we get to this. So, alright. First off is the set on the left. This one is a very obvious one. It's purely just for stuff like AR. It's AR with Brave Lucina support, mind you. Because at the end of the day, this set hits 72 attack. Send for the Spade basically gives you 4 attack and defense the second you have a buff on you, by the way, if you're curious and actually do not remember what this weapon does, as most people do. So that means that coupled into Fierce Stance, you're basically looking at 72 attack. 72 attack plus Ruptured Sky tends to kill a whole lot of things. Not to mention, on top of this, you're also looking at, you know, 41 speed, which is pushed to 46 with Speed Ploy. You can also use Death Ploy if you think that will, you know, yield better results. And you still have 46 res outside of combat, which makes AoEs able to be tanked. As weird as that is to say about, you know, a red unit. With this, you end up at also 47 defense. So 47-46 is quite good already. But on top of having 72 attack, that makes it absolutely disgusting. Add to this attacks ploy if you want to have more bulk, and you're at 52 def, 51 res. I don't think I have to explain why this is good. This, in general, is a phenomenal stat line. As for the set on the right, this is also a very typical one. This one is just, you know, typical Aether set with slaying effect. Special Spiral will basically get your 4 cooldown down to 2, meaning you get a hit and then you proc instantly. So, yeah, it's pretty obvious. You basically just keep consistently healing yourself. As far as the bond skill goes, again, you can just use Speed Ploy instead and decide to go for Attack Res Bond instead, or something similar, or just try to combo both Attack Ploy with Speed Res Bond for, you know, 52 def and res. Really, it comes down to what you want. Swift Stance, whenever that becomes a seal, or actually no, it already is a seal, is also an option if you prefer to not have a bond effect because Aether rates. So yeah, overall pretty solid. Though keep in mind, if you're going to use this Aether team comp, my best bet, if I were you, would be to run this with New Year Alphonse, because New Year Alphonse will basically get the combo started. Instead of 4 cooldown, you'll be at 2 cooldown immediately, which means that you'll be ready to just, with Brave Lucina, take a hit and then proc Aether right away. Which is, you know, a pretty solid combo overall. Next up. Now these are very standards. I don't think I have to explain these too much, but I might as well. These are Brazen Sets. Set on the right is just Brazen, attack speed, def, and res. It's rare that you'll see me use Brazens that will be basically giving you stats across the board. And that's not because I go out of my way to just not use them. It's just that most of the time it's not worth it. The fact of the matter, getting 5 across the board or 7 across the board is cool and all, but unless your stat line is made in a way that you actually benefit from all of those stat increase, it's pointless. Itsuki is one of those units that actually uses this pretty well. In other words, you're basically looking at 69 attack, 48 speed, as well as, because of Sandford Spade, 54 def, and 53 res. The attack is actually at 73. So 73, 48, with 54, 53. And that's without Speed Ploy in mind. Though Speed Ploy is really good for one reason and one reason alone. Before your Brazen is up, you're at 41 speed. You're in a very weak state at that point, so Speed Ploy is a good way to go around it. This also uses Special Spiral for 2 reasons. Brazens are very good, and they are multi-phased, meaning that if you have only 2 cooldown left on your Ignis, you can just attack, get hit, and then proc Ignis. Or with Brave Lucina, you can just take the hit, and then proc. Both situations are quite solid. As for the set on the left, it's very similar but with Wrath and Moonbow, and Slaying Edge. This is more akin to a Iris set, to put it as simple as possible. This is just, you get good stats, and on top of this, basically, you have Wrath, which will give you an extra 10 damage on Moonbow. Do keep in mind, while I do have Moonbow here, Noontime is also a very good option, because, yes, you have Brazens, but Noontime is pretty good to just keep your HP high. That said, it can be very unwieldy, because Itsuki is just very bulky. Typically, you want this on the weird units that have good bulk, but not amazing bulk, so you can just take a hit and proc it. Because the way Wrath works is simple. You basically take the hit, and when you're proccing the special, they check your HP to see if you're eligible for the 10 HP, the 10 damage increase. So, as a result, being at full HP at the start of combat doesn't matter. It's really just when you spec. Meaning, you can be at full HP, like 51, take basically just, 15 damage, and because of that 15 damage you took, your Moonbow still gets the 10 damage. It's the only skill that is calculated in that manner, which, not too surprised. It's a very specific skill. But yeah, this is also a very solid choice. Though, like I said, Moonbow will be typically a bit better for kills. And Noontime is good, but can kick you out of Brazens. It comes down to preference. I still figured I'd mention it, though. But yeah, this makes you very destructive. As well, Wrath will give you the one charge you need for Moonbow, meaning you can just proc, get hit, proc again. As I said, this is the typical Ira setup, for lack of a better term. It's just that, unlike Ira, you are also extremely bulky. This set still means you're at 50 defense and 49 res, and if attack ploy procs, you're at 55, 54. That's kinda disgusting, isn't it? Well, yes. Yes, it very much is. So, Next up, this is the Brave Sword set, which actually was the one I was thinking was the 4th set, but oh well. Yeah, this is a bit odd, isn't it? But it can definitely work, even with low attack def. Swift Sparrow 3, comboed into Swift Sparrow 2, basically pushes your speed to 47. It also pushes your attack to 66. With Def Ploy, that pushes it to 71, and low attack def pushes it to 74. And the enemy cannot buff. Basically, if you're fighting someone with a 6 def buff, it's basically as if you had 80 attack. It's kinda disgusting. And on top of this, you can just quad. I suppose you could also use Desperation instead of low attack def, but I figure low attack def is better because of certain units running Wary Fighter or any such skills, or just missing the double in general. Just in case. Set on the right is a bit similar. The difference here is that you'll be speccing a lot more. Essentially, this set is a lot more reliant on Dragon Flowers and investment as per usual, but will basically push your speed to 46. If you have flowers, you're at 47. Still the magic number, basically. But the idea is that you'll still be able to hit, 65 attack. With Def Ploy, that's 70 attack. 70 attack when you just get hit. Or rather, hit proc, get hit proc, is quite solid. Not to mention, Ruptured Sky basically means that any dragon you're going to deal with dies. If you're dealing with Sophis, you'll typically be killing her because you have just that much attack, which is, again, very solid. So, yeah, that's kind of really good. The reason why you want Ruptured Sky, by the way, over Moonbow, or why you would want Moonbow over Ruptured Sky in general, is very simple, okay? If you have anything that does Def Ploy, okay? And I guess I should take my own advice and should have been running Draconic Aura on Itsuki on the left. But essentially, the idea is if someone runs a lot of things that lowers the enemy's defense, Moonbow will typically do less damage than Ruptured Sky, because Moonbow relies on your enemy having high defense to do more damage. Likewise, Ruptured Sky depends on your attack, on the enemy's attack. So if you have, say, Attack Ploy, Low Attack Def, and so on and so forth, you kinda don't want to use Ruptured Sky at that point. It's the same logic, really. So yeah. The set on the right basically mean you'll hit proc on most dragons. And if, you know, they are armored, meaning they'll typically have special fighters, that's still fine. That's still absolutely fine. Because no matter how you look at it, right? No matter how you look at it, you still get one charge because of Heavy Blade. Meaning that if you're quadding, you'll basically just do hit, hit, get hit, proc Ruptured Sky anyway, which will probably kill them. And because of your bulk, you'll quite easily take the hit. It basically makes Itsuki very difficult to tank. One of the few units that can effectively run Brave Sword as solid as he does. Purely because, well, to put it simply, he's a Brave Sword unit that, you know, has enough bulk that he doesn't need Desperation, meaning you can run a lot of skills instead. I would also like to point out the fact that you can, instead of low speed Def 3, if you have good support, and by good support I really just mean Peony, because Peony can provide 3 speed across the entire column. If you have something buffing your speed like this, you can instead run Special Spiral. And because you'd be running Special Spiral, and I suppose that's also a fair point also on the set on the left in general, you could just use Special Spiral with Luna or Draconic Aura, and therefore just hit proc every single time, which makes the set on the left a lot more threatening. But essentially, for the set on the right, you need Peony support. You need Peony in your row to basically give you the speed that you need for it. Now, to put it simply, if you do have this, you can run Special Spiral, which would mean Ruptured Sky is no longer needed. You can run Ignis at that point. Yeah, Ignis. Which basically means you'll be doing, what is this? 34 damage per proc? So, if you proc Ignis once, you're basically at the point you hit proc Ignis. There's not a whole lot that can tank 70 attack Brave Swords that proc Ignis doing 34 damage. I can assure you. But if you want to have a semi-decent enemy phase, you'll still need Peony, because otherwise your speed is going to be aberrant. Because, of course, you won't be able to back out. That said, you can also run Gale Force with Brave Sword. Though, keep in mind, it won't be consistent at all. Okay? Just be careful of that. Unless you run, of course, Time Pulse. If you run Time Pulse, you'll basically... If you're at 5 charge, basically, you're still fine because it's going to push it down to 4. Meaning you'll hit and hit again. Proc Heavy Blade. That's basically your 4 charge. Unless you one-shot, which may actually happen sometimes. But yeah, moving on. And this is set 4, which are the Heartblade sets. Yeah, I don't think I'm surprising anyone here. It's actually pretty solid on Itsuki, because he's just good everywhere. So, obviously, Heartblade with Ignis would basically mean Special Spiral, which means with your 47 def res, or sorry, 50-50 because of Heartblade, is pretty solid. At that point, this set here is mostly with Brave Lucina, which means that your 41 speed still hits 47 because of Gears Kogel. So, hey, you're already in a good spot, which means, well, Brave Lucina can do one of two things. Either just go all in into your attack, which basically would mean 79 attack. Or you can just go one drive def, one drive res to provide more bulk, which would mean you can push your def and res from 50-50 to 53-53, and with attack ploy 58-58, effectively. Which is extremely just busted in general. 53 def would mean 42 damage on the Ignis, meaning that if you get hit and then, you know, proc Ignis, the enemy is most likely dead. You're in the 70 in terms of attack, proccing 40 plus damage with Ignis. There's just no way about it. Set on the right is more or less the same without this encounter. This one is definitely more damage based, though. You'll be looking at 42-43 unbuffed, and then with buffs you'll be looking at 48-49, which pretty good. And then with Heart's Blade, that's 51-52. Attack ploy pushes that to 56-57, and Brave Lucina to 59 def, 60 res. At that point, I actually should have run Glacies because I end up having more res than defense, but oh well, that's my bad. Saves me right for actually doing this like very late at night. But yeah, again, Artist Blade is refined to speed just because Brave Lucina will provide the speed that you're missing here. Though, honestly, at that point, you could just decide to run and run either an attack refine instead, or def or res refine. All of which are good options just as well if you're running Brave Lucina as, you know, support. The set is a bit more all around, however. But yeah, that's basically all my sets for Itsuki. Hopefully, this gives you a bit of an idea as to why E is as good as I say he is. As for his placement, I think most people will think I've put him in S+, but no. I decided to put him in S tier. S tier does not exactly have a whole lot of units, and that kind of makes sense. My S+ tier picks are typically units that have a pref that elevates them to the next level, essentially. Brunia is a really good example, and so is Aversa. The only one that is not like this is Eliwood, and that's purely for the fact that he's as min-maxed as it gets, and not really min-maxed in the sense that most people understand, as in like Zephiel min-max kind of min-maxed. I mean, like, if I were to make a stat line for an armored unit, I would not be deviating that far off from what Eliwood has. That's what I'm trying to get at. Eliwood's stat line is just so perfectly distributed, it's really hard to improve at that point. Like, the best you could do is like move maybe a bit of HP into some def and res, and that's basically it. There's not much you can do to improve this. Even with Gen 5 BST, the most you would have... Gen 4 BST, the most you'd be doing is one attack... two attack, one def, one res. That's it. The res does not need to change. You could decide to go for one more points of speed, and that's basically it as well. Like, just one across the board, or two attack, one def, and one res. As I said, Eliwood is not exactly a unit that can be very more optimized in terms of stat line than he already is. As far as Itsuki is concerned, I don't feel that way for Itsuki. I feel like his speed is a bit too low in certain cases, unless you have Brave Lucina to support yourself with, which can hurt his viability a bit. And he also does not have a pref. Or rather, he has a pref, but it feels like so incomplete, like I said earlier. If his pref gave him stats on like every stat, which, by the way, just want to point this out, but is Performa, aka Persona, is Chrom. Chrom has 2 Fortune. Bond Fortune, which gives 4 across the board, and then the Sealed Fortune, which gives 5 across the board. So, I don't think it's very far-fetched to think that the Fortune would have been something across the board. But, oh well. I'm pretty sure they just decided to gimp his Spref since he was given away for free while he was supposed to be a banner unit. But that's just the way I look at things. So yeah, S tier it is. It's still a very good unit. Even as a one-off, I'd say getting him to +1 is well worth it. Not just for the arena season, but because he's actually a very good unit. And the first merge is just really solid. Any point of speed you can get on this guy is well worth it. Honestly, getting him to +2 might not be a bad idea, because then you're at 32 speed. Opens a few ways around, and makes him fairly solid. So yeah, as far as Travant is concerned, I don't think I can put him any higher. Like I said, the best thing I can say about Travant is that he's a good AA pick to counter Altina during Astra season in Arena Assault. That's it. You're never going to be using him in Aether raids outside of him being a bonus unit. That's kind of just a fact. He's just not up there in terms of unit to use. What do you want me to tell you? I really hope we get Gen 1 Travant. And I hope he gets the treatment I hope he gets the treatment he deserves. There we go. But, well, as it is, as depressing as it is, that's kind of just what we're stuck with. But yeah, in conclusion, I hate what they did to Travant, and for Itsuki's case, he's a really good unit. As far as character goes, that's up for debate. Personally, I don't really like him, and I do actually give a fair shot to Tokyo Mirage Session. But, like, it's a main character in a Fire Emblem game. Main characters in Fire Emblem games are not really amazing. They're either bland, okay, or then they're Corins. But, you know, you do what you do. I think I've said about all I had to say about this banner, though. So, as per usual, I'll see you all later. I suppose I'll be seeing you in the comments or on the Sacred Seal tier list update that will most likely come out tomorrow. Until then, I'm gonna try to sleep an hour before I have to go to work. But, I'll be seeing you all later, guys. Have a nice one, y'all.